On the torrential day, Katiana was feeding their son Herodotus II, while the king Herodotus was sharpening his blade. Through Katiana's motherly humming and the scraping of the king's whetstone, Herodotus I could hear men screaming outside the kingdom. He couldn't make out the words, but he did notice that the tone of the voices were panicked. He asked Katiana to be silent for a moment and listen to the voices. He soon realized that the voices that they were hearing were of Herodotus' own men calling out to the king for assistance. Herodotus ordered Katiana to stay home with the baby and keep safe while Herodotus charged out of the house and sped past the 3 sectors of the kingdom to the battlefield. The men that had already been on the battlefield cleared a path for Herodotus when he arrived. As he walked down the aisle of soldiers, he could see on the horizon a wave of gray, decaying beings charging directly at the kingdom walls. It was the army of Necroptus. With a triumphant yell, Herodotus and his men charged into battle. As if water was crashing against itself, the army of Herodotus collided with the army of Necroptus. The sound of metal scratching, flesh ripping, soldiers screaming, and necros screeching, and the injured cries of men reverberated throughout the land of Ashmary. Many necro and ashen were fallen as crimson and green painted the battlefield. Surrounded in the middle of the bloodbath, Herodotus slashed and hacked, eviscerating necros in all different directions without sustaining a single scratch. The king looked past the wall of chaos and saw a soldier that wasn't wearing appropriate armor and his weapons seemed to be mismatched. The soldier clashed swords with a hulking necro that bore 2 heads and 4 arms. Each arm seemed to have a mind of its own, as its attacks did not seem well coordinated and didn't seem to have been synchronized. The soldier attempted to swing his sword at one of the necro's heads but missed, to which the necro took its advantage and swung back at the soldier. The soldier reacted soon enough, but not soon enough before the undead soldier's sword knocked off his helmet. Immediately, Herodotus knew who the soldier was. It was Katiana. Realizing it was his wife, Herodotus called out to her to retreat, but as Katiana averted her attention to Herodotus, the necro she had been fighting plunged its sword right through Katiana's armor, exiting out the back. Herodotus screamed Katiana's name as the necro removed the sword and Katiana's body fell to the ground. Herodotus screamed on the top of his lungs and darted for his wife's killer, ignoring any other necro in his path. Herodotus leaped into the air with his sword, slicing downward between the heads. The king's sword followed all the way through to the necks, causing the necro's body to peel in half. With the assailant dead, Herodotus ran to his wife's body, laying in a pool of blood. He picked her up and cradled her head. She placed her hand on his cheek, smiled, and made Herodotus keep a promise. Katiana made Herodotus promise that he was going to return to their son alive and cherish him. The distraught Herodotus wouldn't leave his wife behind. He told Katiana that she was going to be okay and that they both would see their son. Katiana's eyes started to leak, and on her face the most warming smile Herodotus had ever seen. With one final breath, she told her husband that she loved him as her eyes slowly began to close. Herodotus called for his wife to wake up and return to him, but while still bearing that motherly smile, Katiana's hand dropped lifelessly from Herodotus' cheek. Herodotus sat with his wife's body, disregarding the preceding war around them, as he wailed and hugged his wife close to him. With the battle having been won by the Ashians, as Herodotus being the leading commander in this victory, the necro invasion finally subsided. The land was riddled with ash caused by the fires and disintegrated necros and heavily drizzled with red and green. Bodies of both necro and human decorate the battlefield as ashen Volcros pick up and enjoy their meals of corpses. Many humans stood, however, chanting Herodotus' name, covered in cuts and scrapes. Mikos had been saved, for now. Herodotus lost more than gained, however. Wrecked with grief, Herodotus returned home to his child and cradled him just as his wife had requested. Being so young, Herodotus knew his son was not quite yet able to understand, but Herodotus tried his best and the most honest he possibly could.
My poor boy. I am so sorry. Mother, she has left us. Your mother was a great woman, and I...
he said, trying to catch and calm his breath.
It is just you and I now, son. But worry not. I will take even more care of you, little Herodotus, my son.
He could see that his son didn't understand most of his explanation. The one thing that Herodotus I noticed was when the mentioning of Herodotus II's mother never returning had been said. Herodotus II did not understand war or death yet, only that his mother and father were his world, and he would never see the other half again. The heartbreaking news brought the little boy to a frantic wail. He covered his eyes and sat on the ground, crying for his mother to return, calling for her and begging for her. Seeing his son in such a condition made the king's sorrow amplify. He walked over to his inconsolable son, knelt down, and began to cry as well. He hugged the young prince and promised that he wasn't going anywhere. Herodotus and his son sat on the floor of the castle, crying together from dusk till dawn. Herodotus rounded up citizens that he had helped and lived with throughout the years and instructed that everyone band together and build a new home. A home that everyone across the land would remember the name. A home where people no longer feared the dangers of the outside world intruding. A home to thrive. The townspeople in Herodotus immediately built a castle on the very spot where Katiana had taken her last breath on the battlefield. It was constructed from marble stone that had been native around the land of Ashmary. Katiana loved these stones, for she was always seemed to be fascinated on how these rocks were made and colored. Embedded inside the swirly stone was depictions of the Great War that had made way for their new home, inscribed in gold. Tellings of a massive battle that took many lives and not much time. Trimmings and railings were solid gold, and the doors leading to the castle and rooms throughout were gold as well. 3 long towers erected from the base to the ashen sky, with long banners of white and gold hanging from their balconies. Around the castle, 2 more larger walls were built around the castle, thereby solidifying their dominance of the land. They too were made from the same stone used to build the castle. After many long years, this came to be the birth of the kingdom of Herodotus. For his good deeds, victories, and the director of the construction of the people's new home, Herodotus was named king, where he sits upon a golden throne. An image is embedded on the headrest of the throne, displaying a shield to signify the durability and protection of the kingdom, and a star in the middle with a diamond in each corner to represent the light shining in their darkness and the devotion of the All-Mother. The kingdom flourished, but with this power came the constant fear of war. War that was a result of Necroptus's insatiable lust for the kingdom's location where fresh meat roamed, the water wasn't stagnant, and the stained land was alive. The kingdom of Herodotus consisted of 3 different sections or sectors. First sector of the kingdom was known as the battalion sector. Here all the soldiers of Herodotus' army lived and trained for battles ahead. Their houses were reinforced with steel from Emberheart and fashioned with wooden stakes for extra protection for themselves while they slept. Soldiers were assigned to this sector, for if an invasion were to happen at any given time, Herodotus' army would be ready for him. Soldiers were allowed into other sectors, but civilians could not enter the battalion sector unless passing or special permission, for this was a potential danger zone. The battalion sector protected the next ring, known as the town sector. The town sector was the sector of the kingdom where the casual townsfolk lived their everyday lives. There was no need to leave the walls of Herodotus, for it was known as the safest place in Ashmary, and everything that the townsfolk needed was already there. Some even still in fear of the Necros roamed the wilds, hunting for food. Streets of the town sector were lively, with multiple wet markets, bargaining merchants, children playing, and crowds of people flowed through the streets. The townsfolk of Herodotus were all armed with some sort of concealed weapon, anywhere from a simple farming tool or arrow to a full arsenal of swords, daggers, bows, and shields. The town sector wrapped around the core of the kingdom, known as the heart sector. The heart sector housed the castle Herodotus and its residents and close friends of Herodotus during the wars. Castle Herodes housed over 100 rooms, 3 main halls, and a dining hall big enough to contain almost half the town. Housed deep under the marble walls of the castle lied the kingdom's most treasured possession, the Ark of the Union. The king ensured that he would protect the Ark, for he had heard that the Ark contained the future of all life. No matter what, Herodes did not want to succumb to the desires of discovering the Ark's contents, but he knew that whatever the contents had been, it could not fall into the wrong hands by any means necessary. The Ark was protected by 6-inch thick reinforced steel double doors imbued with magic that repelled any form of attack, arcane or physical. Only someone of Herodes' bloodline may dispel the barrier by placing a few drops of their own blood into a golden bowl placed in front of the door. Then a special key made from Emberheart is then used to unlock the steel doors, unlocking the way into the cavernous vault. This secret was never to be revealed to anyone, for if the Necros were to find out about such a treasure, they would be knocking on the kingdom's doors in an instant. Herodes kept the secret hidden even from the majority of his people, but sometimes the closest friends becomes the greatest enemies.